All right, so GLM Deep Dive just posted a 94.62 on OmniDoc Bench, the highest reported score across open and closed models at its size class. And I'm putting it up against product B today to see if those numbers actually hold up. The GLM family just dropped new versions with some pretty wild specs. So I'm running GLM Deep Dive versus product B across 4 real tests. Every claim is pinned to a source, vendor docs flagged, community blogs labeled, no spin. Honestly, what surprised me most was that your provider choice might matter more than the model itself for real-world speed, and that changes the decision in a way I didn't expect going in. So this one's for you if you're deciding whether to build a workflow on GLM or stick with what you've got now, because the wrong call costs you real time and real money. Whether that's a pipeline that's too slow for users, an OCR tool that mangles your documents, or a context window that cuts off mid-task and forces you to start over. Test 1 is domain-specific accuracy, and here's what actually goes wrong when a model fails. This, you ship a coding agent, it hallucinates a function that doesn't exist, and your user hits a runtime error, or your math pipeline returns a wrong answer with total confidence and you don't catch it until something downstream breaks. What I found is a split picture. GLM 5.1 scores 58.4 on SWE Bench Pro, Press Verify from Deep Infra, and GLM 5. 2 bumps that to 62.1, but I want to be straight with you guys. That 62.1 comes from a single community blog, not an independent press source. Though the AIM 2026 score of 95.3 for GLM 5, 1 is press verified, which is genuinely impressive. Now, before I call a winner, I want to flag something. The GDP Val AA LO of 1524 for GLM 5. 2 sounds super impressive, but it's community reported only, and there's no opponent to compare it against anyway. So take these numbers as directional, not a verified scoreboard. Okay, so GLM Deep Dive takes test 1. I was expecting the coding scores to be the weak spot. And what actually happened is the press verified AIMA 2026 number at 95.3 is legitimately strong. And even the conservative STUI bench figure at 58.4 is competitive. So that puts GLM Deep Dive 1, product B0 on the scoreboard. Test 2 is multilingual text comprehension and OCR quality. And when this breaks, you get garbled output from a scanned invoice, a JSON blob with missing fields, or a LaTeX formula that's just wrong. And if you're processing documents that scale across multiple languages, one bad parse can corrupt an entire downstream dataset. What surprised me here is the model size. GLM OCR is 0.9 billion parameters, which is tiny, and it scored 94.62 on OmniDoc Bench V1. 5, the highest reported figure across models of any size according to the press source. And for reference, Gemini 3 Pro scored 90.33 on the same benchmark, though the 100+ language and structured output claims are community blog sourced, so I treat those as directional. The honest caveat here is that the multilingual support claim of 100+ languages comes from a community blog, not a vendor doc or press source. So the benchmark score is solid, but the full feature set hasn't been independently verified. And if your use case depends specifically on a non-Latin script, you'd want to get your hands dirty and test it yourself before committing. GLM Deep Dive takes test 2. I was expecting a sub 1 billion model to be a compromise, and instead I got the highest reported OmniDoc bench score across all model sizes at 94.62, which is pretty wild for something that small. So that's 2 for GLM Deep Dive, 0 for product B so far. Test 3 is API latency and throughput, and the failure mode is really concrete. Your user sends a message and waits 4 seconds before the first token appears. That's not a benchmark number. That's a user bouncing, or you're running batch jobs, and a slow provider triples your processing time and your bill. So I looked at press benchmarks across 10 providers for GLM 5. 1, and the spread is really interesting, Fireworks hits 175.2 tokens per second with a 0.94 second TTFT. Parasail bottoms out at 33.8 tokens per second, and that's a 5.2x gap between the fastest and slowest provider on the same model, which honestly shocked me a little. And this is kind of the thing that changes how you think about this whole dimension. The provider is the real variable because Silicon Flow's TTFT is 4.47 seconds and Fireworks is 0.94 seconds on the same underlying model. So picking the right provider matters way more than I expected, and it's a completely separate decision from picking the model. GLM Deep Dive takes test 3, though I'd frame this. 1 carefully, I was expecting model version to drive speed, and what actually drove it was provider infrastructure. But the press verified numbers show Fireworks at 175.2 tokens per second is genuinely fast, and that's a real option for you. So 3 for GLM Deep Dive, still 0 for product B. Test 4 is context window utilization, and here's what actually breaks when you run out. You're feeding a model a long code base or a 200-page contract. It hits the context ceiling and it either truncates silently or throws an error. And either way, you get incomplete output and you probably don't know which part got dropped. What I found is a clear step up across versions. GLM 5.2 supports 1 million tokens of context, press verified with a max output of 131,072 tokens. GLM 5. One tops out at 202,752 tokens input, also press verified. And GLM 5.5 is 128,000. So the 1 million context is real, but it's only on 5.2. And the output cap stays at 131,000, regardless of how much you feed in. One thing worth knowing before you get too excited about 1 million tokens, the full GLM 5. One model at 744 billion parameters needs 1.65 terabytes of disk space to run. That's not a typo. And Unslow's 2-bit GGUF cuts it down to 220 gigabytes, which is still a lot where the context window is real. But self-hosting the full model is a serious infrastructure commitment. GLM Deep Dive takes test 4. I was expecting the context window jump from 5.1 to 5.2 to be incremental, and it's actually a 5 times leap from 203,000 to 1 million tokens. Both press verified, which is a real spec for long document workflows. So that's 4 for GLM deep dives, 0 for product B across all 4 tests. GLM clearly wins on document parsing, with GLM OCR's 94.62 OmniDoc bench score being the highest reported number at any model size. It wins on context length with a press verified 1 million token window on 5.2, wins on provider flexibility across 10 benchmark options ranging from 33.8 to 175.2 tokens per second. And the MIT license on the open weights means 0 commercial restrictions if you're self-hosting. Honestly, this report can't tell you where product B wins because no opponent was ever specified. There's no head-to-head data here. And GLM 5.2's top-line claims, like the GDP Val 88 LO of 1524 and the Design Arena ranking, are still community blog only with no independent press confirmation. So relative quality on any dimension against a real competitor is genuinely unknown. Okay, so here's the honest decision rule. I was expecting a clean head-to-head and got a capability profile instead, which actually tells you something useful. Because if you need long document processing, fast OCR, or a self-hosted open weight model with no commercial restrictions, GLM Deep Dive is the pick. But if you need verified side-by-side quality comparisons against a named competitor, before you commit, you're not there yet with the current evidence.